Smart girl.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Professionals Pulse. I'm Farida Musaddi, the co founder and CEO of Al Fateh Technologies Dubai. Al Fateh Technologies, as you all know, is a tech consultancy. We're based in Dubai with capabilities to serve complex IT requirements globally. Now, today I have something a topic close to my heart and something which is very crucial in today's time. We are looking towards an often overlooked topic, which is the impact of cinema in normalizing crimes against women. Film and media have the power to shape cultural norms and influence societal attitudes, sometimes in ways we may not fully realize. While cinema is a powerful tool for storytelling and cultural reflection, it can also perpetuate harmful stereotypes and normalize violence and discrimination against women. In this episode, we will explore how portrayals of gender based violence and the objectification of women in movies can contribute to societal desensitization and the normalization of these issues. We'll discuss the role of filmmakers and audiences who play a very challenging role over these narratives and how the industry can contribute to a positive change. And let me welcome Dr. Ashish for today's episode. Dr. Ashish, thank you so much for joining us today on this podcast. We are really honored to have you with us today, sir.
Thank you so much, Farida ji. Thank you. It is my honor to be here, and you aptly, I could not have put the context to what we are going to discuss today better than you did. Thank you so much.
Thank you. So, for everyone, Dr. Ashish is the ex group president of Z Network and Z News, group CEO of News 24, CEO of Prakash Shah Films, business head at Bajaj Group, business head at Hinduja Group, and CMO of Hero Reality. Dr. Ashish Kaul holds a PhD, a master's in sociology, an MBA, a postgraduate degree in advertising, and a BA in public administration and history. He has been awarded a senior fellowship from the CCRT, Ministry of Culture. Dr. Kaul is also a best selling author of six historical books. His notable works include Didda, the Warrior Queen, who was released by Mr. Amitabh Bachchan, Refugee Camp, launched by the INB Minister, Stree Desh, the Legendary Women of Kashmir, presented by the Minister for External Affairs and Culture, Rakt Gulab, unveiled by the HRD Minister, and 1967 Parmeshwari Andolan, introduced by parliamentarian Suresh Prabhu. Dr. Kaul has received numerous prestigious awards, such as the Man of Excellence Award in 2020 and the National Education Brilliance Award. He has also been commended by the Honorable Prime Minister of India and the Honorable Governor of Maharashtra. In his illustrious career, Dr. Kaul has served as the group president of Z Network, uh, as we mentioned, and various other companies. And he is also the founder of Folklore Entertainment. So, once again, Dr. Ashish, we are really happy to have you here. And as I mentioned, the topic also is something which is close to my heart and I believe every woman's heart today.
Thank you so much, Farida ji. Absolute. I think we were discussing earlier, the world was a far saner, far greater a place, far prosperous a place, far glorious a place when the right people were handling the affairs of the world. It is just that the world took a detour, and we are where we are.
Absolutely. And that's what we would be talking about today, and the role and responsibility of every individual who is associated with the entire process of filmmaking and how it is affecting and influencing the world around.
Yes.
So, to begin with, according to you, how do films and television, and nowadays I can say the web series, contribute to shaping these societal attitudes towards women and potentially normalize this violence against them?
Absolutely. I think you chose the right word, societal attitudes, societal attributes and attitudes both. I think, you see, what happens is media and entertainment, while there is no brick and mortar, there's no factory, there's no machines, and people tend to take it for granted. It is something that is considered to be very soft. And in its softness, in its seemingly softer, the envelope and the muffle lies the most powerful weapon that the world has ever known, which is the ability to influence the way you think. And there is no other business in the world but media and entertainment that changes the way people think. There is no other business in the world that can do that. We have seen in the recent past how governments change, how governments fall, how governments come to power. It is purely media at play. In this larger context, if you see, uh, the crimes against women, if you see what is the construct of crimes against women, if you see various reports, whether it is the national crime bureaus of the world and
Correct.
stuff that I've gone through, you will see majority and overwhelming majority of the crimes are actually not even considered crimes by people who do those crimes. They, in
Correct.
their minds, when those crimes are happening, they're not crimes. It
It's
is
normal to them.
normal human behavior at work. It is
Correct.
purely a matter of breaking the resistance to that situation, which eventually becomes a crime, if at all it becomes a crime. And mind you, it is just a minuscule of the crimes against women that ever get reported. For example, I may take a step back, and when I started my research, the funny part was cartoons also contribute tremendously towards normalizing crime. So it is not just the standard three-dimensional
Mm,
content that has the impact. A seamlessly popular and a
harmless. Yeah.
harmless cartoon like a Tom and Jerry has
Okay.
tremendous impact in normalizing crime. You know why? When children are watching Tom and Jerry, ideally what happens? And there is a Tom and Jerry, they're always at it together, they're beating each other, they're cutting each other to pieces, they're thrashing each other. Uh, what to a child, what is it doing? It is conveying continuously to a child that that it does not cause any harm. To cut the
Yeah,
long
this is
story
normal.
short, when Jerry or Tom is being chopped, is thrashed, is beaten, he comes back to life, and there at the end of every episode, everything is fine. That is
Correct.
how minds are shaped. Now imagine, it is the most popular product that the world has ever seen, Tom and Jerry. Have
Absolutely.
you ever found anybody who has a dislike for them? But how silently it has contributed in normalizing crime. So if you see the children today, what is the most common sort of a change that you see in children's behavior? They are prone to aggression.
Yeah.
Today
Yeah.
children are
They're
more
turning
prone to
more
aggression.
violent.
A child today does not mind throwing a phone at you, or damaging a thing, because he does not understand. Children today, you find young children, they're scratching each other, pulling each other's hair, because that's what they've seen and they think it is okay. Now
Correct.
take that argument further. If you see, especially, tremendously, when cinema came into power, the irony is, the core of cinema worldwide was women. If you study the origin of cinema, it was always women who were the main leaders of all the stories. Because worldwide, if you see any civilization which has a certain history to it, it is the women. If you especially see the Indian subcontinent, you see women. There is no history but women. Whether it
Correct.
is the social order, whether it is the religious order, it is the women who drive the narrative always. But you see the same narrative, and if you study, let's say, the French cinema, if you study the
Mhm.
European cinema, you don't find those helpless women anywhere. There are
Correct.
women who are strong, who are articulated, who know what they're doing. It is your interpretation that what they're doing is wrong, immoral, X, Y, Z. But you find the women characters are absolutely sharp pointed. They know what they're doing. But especially if you see then towards the end of somewhere around the 18th century, it was the ascendancy of the British Empire that changed
Mhm.
everything. So the story that there is that the sun never sets in the British Empire, because no matter where the sun sets, the sun is rising somewhere where there is British Empire, and that is
Correct.
how the term "the sun never sets in British Empire" came. So cultural dominance is the most is the greatest challenge that anybody faces in wanting to persecute you or trying to rule over you, because how many people eventually can you kill? An idea cannot be killed, and therefore the cultural domination, Britishers, they introduced cinema as a means of controlling. So today, if you see a perspective of that, unfortunately Britishers are long gone, but what they did still remains, and we, unfortunately, the so-called more educated people at the advancement of various things, technology, leapfrog, all of that, we are mindlessly taking forward the British agenda of dominating women and creating a society which is so very tolerant to crimes against women.
Okay.
If I give you an example of, I recently wrote an edit after I watched a film, and this was a film, Ranveer Singh and Alia Bhatt. I think
Mm.
Raja, or I'm
Rocky or
forgetting the name
right.
of the film, Rocky Raja Ki Kahani.
Mm.
And I was watching that film, and everybody in the cinema hall was whistling and cheering and stuff like that, and I was so aghast at uh, how we have become as a society. you know Now see what happens technically in a film like that. You have a woman who is trying to be in her own. Now, see, Alia Bhatt's character, for example, in that film, was
Yeah.
that of a very strong
Strong,
lady,
independent.
who strong,
Yes.
independent lady. But see her contrast to Ranveer. He's sort of an uneducated guy, mannerless guy. But what is happening to this woman when she is confronting, or when they're coming in together, when they're sharing the screen? She is melting away. Why is she melting away? Because he's dominating with the lack of mannerisms, and he's pushing the envelope. So what is the learning there in films, from films that symbolize such situations? It is, one, when a woman says no, she does not mean it. I think,
Correct.
if you because since this was my study matter, and when I went through that, when I collated the data, I figured it is the crime actually starts by this thought that it is not a crime.
Correct.
It is happening with the consent of a woman. The start point of that consent is no.
No.
So it is actually not a no, it is just the starting point, it is a process. So today, when you commit a crime against women, when the woman starts by saying no, in your mind, it is a process that has started, which will travel from no to yes eventually.
Correct.
All you have to do is be at it. So
Yeah. Be
while
persistent.
it begins with verbalization of a process, which is, I will propose to you, I will invade your privacy, I will invade your space, and you will keep on saying no. But to me, that is not a no, because all along the films that I've seen, eventually this is how it starts. I watched those films alone, I watched those films with my friends, I watched those films with my family.
Correct.
Unfortunately, overall the format of a film it is a narrative base. When you get a certificate, crime against women is not considered to be great for certification, unless it is murder, or rapes, or those kinds. These things don't ever be these things
They
are never
don't count.
censored.
Yeah.
So when
Correct.
then you what is the second stage? The second stage is you invade physical space, you begin by touch. so I will hold your hand. So what happens, if you go around, even in your childhood memories, or if you the things that you would have seen, it starts by, perhaps by a verbal conversation, which is
Correct.
which is assuming that there is a no. And then it will begin by, somebody trying to block your space. You're going for a tuition, you're going to a school, or you're going to a college, and somebody will come, he'll block your space. You will again say no. He will not take that no for a no. And then the third stage is the physical contact. So he will begin by holding your objects. It could be your school bag, it could be your cycle, it could be your vehicle, it could be eventually your hand. That is how it begins. You keep
Correct.
saying no. But in my mind, all of that is a process. Eventually, the girl will say yes, because
Yes.
that is how it happens in the
And
film.
that's how it's portrayed. Yes.
That is how it is portrayed. This is absolutely fine. So eventually, I know it is just a question of time. It may take a week, it may take a month, it may take 6 months. In the older let's say pre-digitization, it could take a decade, but you would always
Correct.
be at it. And eventually, the crime becomes when the person does not get that there is a complex message which is not being deciphered by the mail. And then there is either the acid attacks, or the stabbings that we see, or unfortunate rapes and murders that you see, is only a culmination. I, even then, the person does not he has not done a crime. Have you ever seen a remorseful criminal? When you see these the crimes that we see today as a part of the live-ins that are happening, or the affairs that go wrong, or the extramaritals that go wrong, or anything, do you see any remorse? No. the
Absolutely no.
the the very realization that he was at a crime, you see, now the scenario completely changes. If you're stealing somebody's money, you will
Correct.
always see that person melting in remorse. He will be crying, he will have his head. uh, there is a sense of great pride in a crime against women. If you study, which I have, if you study a pattern of criminals post arrest, the
Correct.
person who is involved in a crime against women will always have his shoulders straightened up, head held high. A person who is in caught with crimes other than this will always have his shoulders down and his head held in shame or in guilt. That tells you that, at the end, even if he is convicted, he feels that he has been a sort of a revolutionary. He's sort of been an underdog, and what he has done is honorable. because
Correct.
because ultimately, it is about the society that you live in. You see, a society will shame a petty criminal who has possibly robbed somebody of 10 rupees. But a society does not persecute anybody who is involved in eve teasing, because that is not considered to be crime at all.
I know. I know. I know.
Or somebody
Yes.
who has sort of indulged in a more serious verbal or a physical crime, it is considered to be a crime of honor. There is crime, but that is diluted by using the word honor. So these are honorable crimes. And society
Okay.
today is very happy in accepting that crime as a crime. It is not a crime, it's an act of honor, which is just called crime. And
Okay.
all of this, if you see, back in time, I remember the early 90s, I joined Z that time. And there was a show called, I think, Hasrate, if I remember the name correctly. That was a show that would get us back in those days. We would get, there was a response cell to measure how people are reacting to it, and people would write postcards, they would write letters, back in the time when
Yeah.
there was no digital media. So these guys would send us letters, and I remember, I think we had crossed 50,000 letters a day for a show called
That
Hasrate.
was quite a popular show. I vaguely remember. Yeah.
And those you know 99% of those letters were against that show. It was the most popular show that revolutionized television viewing in India, because that was the first extramarital show. That was the
Yeah.
first
Yeah.
extramarital that ever debuted on Indian television. It was a taboo until then. So imagine 50,000 letters a day, and majority of them, an overwhelming 98, 99%, were against that. And today, is there a show that does not, that has, that does? that even remotely considers extramarital to be bad. It is not even
I
discussed
think it's there
because that
in most of the shows.
normalized now.
Yes.
It is normal. It is normal. What would have been a crime 30 years back, a social crime at that, something that is destroying the social and the moral fabric of humanity 30 years back, today is not even discussed because it has become normal. It is as
Normal.
normal as you wanting home food 30 years back, and today that space has been eroded by a pizza or a burger. It is normal. You
And
don't
the
even discuss
families
that.
itself enjoys those shows.
Yeah, it is the family that ultimately television is a family viewing. People barring OTT, which eventually will replace the traditional wall-held television, and these gory scenes and the crimes and the rapes and the crimes of passion and everything will become a part of society. Today in Bombay, you come from Bombay, I live in Bombay. I mean, do people even worry about live-ins? No. 30 years back, there were societies who would be hesitant in giving accommodation to even bachelors. I mean, we are talking about Bombay.
Yeah.
There still are. You lived in Kandivali West, which is culturally a Gujarati vegetarian dominated area. Gujarati societies have a concern in giving out rentals to people who are non-vegetarian. But eventually, how long?
Yes.
There is a big burger that has come there. There is a McDonald's right there. So eventually, it will be normalized over a period of time, as have many other things been normalized.
Correct. That's so true. But what do you feel, that because you have done this study and you've got into the subject, and that's how you know about these things, how can these things be conveyed to filmmakers or maybe the censorship board so that they take responsibility in portraying such things in their storytelling? And how can this be balanced? How can the ethical considerations be made? How can we convey this to the people out there?
Absolutely, absolutely very well said. You see, there is another side to it. You possibly, you possibly have a gas at home, or you have a vehicle at home. Now, do you allow your underage child to operate a gas or a vehicle? Why? Because you know it is not safe. You don't
Correct.
allow a child of a certain age to drive a vehicle, even if he is good, even if he is great at that. You don't, because there is a law. Okay, and it is
Absolutely.
not safe, not just for the child, but for everybody else who will be in that ecosystem. So
Absolutely.
there is that understanding. You are so clear in your mind that you cannot allow a child to operate a gas, but you are not you the thought of allowing your child to watch unregulated TV will never come to your mind. You will blame the producer of that content. You will
Hmm.
blame the broadcaster, but you will not blame yourself. Now, there was a very important historic case that happened in India. I mean, I fought that case. It was called Kavita Nethani versus Z Network case. Kavita Nethani, incidentally, was a professor in Bombay. And while I was the group president, we had a channel called ZMGM that time, and this channel had access to the library of MGM. And back in the time, the regulation was that you could show what is called frontal nudity from 11 o'clock onwards till 5 o'clock in the morning.
Yes.
Now,
Correct.
that frontal nudity was a part of social order somewhere else, but in India, it was a big thing. We would get
Correct.
tremendous chunk of viewership because of films had that frontal nudity, and in India, it was a big thing back then. I am the same person who had an MOU with Playboy because I wanted to get Playboy to India because I believe there's a huge business opportunity. And why
Correct.
do I believe so? Is because India is the biggest consumer of adult content, mature content in the whole world. It is the
That's true.
biggest content. If you
Yes,
take the
that's
entire world together, India would be still 80 times bigger market than anything else that the world has ever seen. And the
true.
market also, that's also because we are an unregulated market when it comes to mature content.
Correct.
So my idea at that time, my business plan was based on uh, on an assumption that you cannot stop people from consuming mature content. There is a certain, we'll not get into that, but there is a certain human need to possibly consume that kind of content. If you
Absolutely.
cannot, the problem lies in you not accepting that this is true. So
Correct.
I think Mr. Reddy was the broadcasting minister at that time, and I had many sessions with him. And I said that it is a fact. You have to first begin by saying that yes, you cannot stop it. Especially in Bombay, if you go to Dadar, you find these magazine vendors on the roadside selling pornographic content, and there are those kids buying that. How can you stop that? You can't stop
Correct.
that. So the what is the best thing to do? The best thing is to use technology in building a bridge in between, so that you at least have first level of filtration and the content is available only to people who are mature content for mature minds. At least you have a first level of filtration and have set top boxes with a credit card based authorization. Credit cards are not allowed to people below a certain age, so that there's the first level of maturity. Now, this is one part of it, how you regulate at least something that you can't control. But there is a bigger problem. The bigger problem will always remain people who are creating the content and people who are monetizing this content. You see, the problem is today, you think if you show Eve teasing in a glamorous way, if Eve teasing is shown in a Karan Johar film or a Barjatia film, it becomes glamorous. And
Yes.
the society says,
And we
oh,
enjoy it. Yeah.
the
Yeah.
girl should say yes. You see,
Correct.
there is so much of pressure that a poor girl goes through. The biggest pressure is that she thinks and she believes, and rightly so, that the society also wants her to say yes to a
Yes.
crime, which clinical terms is a crime, because it is a part of a glamorous film, it is a part of a glamorous attire. There are these top level actors who are performing those acts. Imagine, I mean, I was so aghast that Alia Bhatt, what I wanted to ask her, what was crossing your mind when you agreed to do a shot like that? Apart from the money, you are shown as such a strong woman, you are a media anchor, you are a person who is standing, you are normalizing a crime against women. What a shame, what a shame. And more shameful is all those people in the cinema hall who are cheering and whistling, that enjoying that, they're including women. So you have a social order that is slowly accepting that it is just a question that no will eventually be replaced by yes.
Yes. Correct.
Now, what is the problem? The problem is, as I was saying, that there is a bigger problem. The bigger problem is that this women narrative has never been told. After the British rule in Asia, the women's stories were completely eradicated out of our history books. Women were always portrayed, especially the Asian women who were the Felix to the whole world. Asian women was shown as becharis, as lachars, as as sex slaves, because that is what Britishers never wanted, a society to revolt when they are exploiting your women. That is what was reflected in their cinema, that a woman
Absolutely.
will like somebody who is in power. What was the definition of that power? Somebody who's reading English, who's reading English books, somebody who is wearing a suit and boots, somebody who is smoking a cigar. So it is okay to succumb to a man like that. That uh, but that that man would have either been a top end lord of a society or a British officer. So that is how they played with your mind. Eventually our stories were completely destroyed. But do you know, Farida, today the world is run by fundamentals, certain
Correct.
economic and social fundamentals, like taxation, like warfare, like combat, like banking, like public distribution system. Do you know world is mostly run but these are the cornerstones of the world order. But do you know these fundamentals were creations of women from India?
Oh.
So world's first bank was not creation of a Western society, it was creation of an Indian woman. World's first bank happened 3,200 years ago, it was creation of a woman. Today world is ruled by spies, right? And the moment
Correct.
we think of spies, we think of the ISIs of the world, the RAWs of the world, the secret services, the KGBs of the world. We think of all of that, and world is ruled by these people actually, right? But do you ever think of women? No. But do you know world's first counterintelligence mechanism was creation of a woman? Men had no role to play in that.
Oh my
Today world
goodness.
is run by what is the pinnacle of bravery? The pinnacle of bravery is our para soldiers, the special soldiers, the navy seals, the black cats, and the special forces of the world. These are considered to be superhuman people, people who go across the borders, conduct these surgical strikes. And you see films like Saving Private Ryan and Behind the Enemy Lines and Osamas of the world. These are done by great acts of courage by just a few men. Where armies have failed, do you ever see a woman? No. But do you
No.
know world's first commando force, the world's first commando elite was creation of a woman. Men had no role to play in that. Today world is ruled by the armies. Do you see women anywhere? No. But do you know world's first army, world's first professional paid army, where they felt that army has to be on rolls, was creation of a woman? Men had no role to play in that. World's first public distribution system. Perhaps we come from a certain age, maybe you have faint memories of ration commodities being available through ration stores. Okay,
Yeah.
that is,
Yeah.
India has the biggest public distribution system in the world, which is considered to be a gift of the Britishers, but wrong. World's first public distribution system, the largest in the world, was creation of a woman from India. So the greatest things in the world runs today on the things that were creations of women from this country. But today, all that credit does not even go to the men of this country, it goes to the Western men. That's all a
Absolutely.
lie. But what happened to that story? The point is, what happened to that story? That story was systematically, over a period of time, removed,
Eradicated.
destroyed, eradicated from history by powerful men who could not accept the power and the greatness of women. I'll give
Correct.
you a very small example of a woman who is very close to my heart, and the woman existed a long time back. There's a woman who was born, and the father had prayed to the god. He wanted a girl child, and his prayer said something like this: that, oh god, give me a daughter. I have two sons. I've created such a vast empire, but I'm not sure that my sons are going to be able to do justice to my greatness, so please give me a daughter. That was prayer of a father to the god. And when the daughter was granted to the father, uh, he set out to kill his own daughter. Somehow he could not kill her. He abandoned her by a royal decree. And this girl became the longest serving queen in the world on her own merit. This girl became the greatest, the bravest, and the most dangerous soldier on the face of this planet on her own, because she was abandoned. But do you know why she was abandoned? Because she was born disabled. She did not have a leg. Now, imagine, this is the story of a girl who was abandoned by her family, thought of harbinger of misfortune because she was born lame, and she made a space for herself on her own
Own.
merit. She became the
Correct.
bravest soldier ever on the face of this planet. She was the creator of what today is known as guerrilla warfare, the most
Yes.
dangerous war strategy ever. We have seen what happened in Afghanistan, we've seen what happened in Vietnam, we see what happens in the world where a few people destroy large armies. That war strategy is considered to be the most destructive war strategy ever. It was a woman from our country, a woman who was abandoned by her own parents because she was born disabled, gifted the world the greatest war strategy ever. This woman was leading the war between the Central Asian forces in the War of Kabul, which was removed from history books in the world, where 38,000 mercenaries who were trained to kill, they attacked the Indian subcontinent in the middle of the night, only to be met by this woman and her band of so-called brothers. And
Okay.
Today we are a nuclear state. We know the context that the world operates in. How much
Absolutely.
time, how many months, years would she have taken to defeat an army of 38,000 people trained to kill with just 500 people? Make a wild guess. I made many.
Maybe a few days.
42 minutes. The world's greatest war was over in 42 minutes.
Oh my goodness.
And it was Ghazni's uncle who ran away from there. He was captured and he said, "Okay, please, oh lady, forgive me. I won't look at India ever again." And she says, "No. If you had to listen to reason, I had given you a chance." And she had him crushed under the feet of her elephant. Those were the 52 years that Indian subcontinent saw absolute peace, because nobody dared to look at India. They said that, don't look at India. There's a crazy woman ruling the borders. There's this woman who guarded the Indian subcontinent for 52 years at her own peril, and only to be forgotten in the annals of history. And
Yeah,
she's
these
not alone.
stories have never come out.
And she's not alone. There are So my research project, the greatest project of my life, is Project Stree Desh, which is the land of women.
Kind of
So there
women.
are these 13 women who have gifted the world the very fundamentals on which the world runs today, but nobody knew about them. So my project Sri Desh traced a history of 10,000 years. It is the first official validated history approved by the governments, available now in a government library, that even accepts that these women existed, which earlier were considered to be figments of imagination or even hearsay.
But
Now
don't you think it's
imagine.
high time these things, these stories should now come out in the open?
Absolutely, absolutely, absolutely. Which is where, I have dedicated a part of my life in taking these stories to the world. I've met thousands of students across dozens of universities and held sessions, and everybody says, "Wow, we don't even know our own history." And my
That's
question has always been to those families who have a girl child and a male child as well. Today, world has of course changed. If you have a son and a daughter, you perhaps love them equally. But
correct.
there's a difference. There's a difference. The difference is, when you raise your son, you always tell him to be respectful to women. And that's the problem. The son will always grow up in thinking that he's doing a favor, because there is no context to this why you should respect women. There is no context to it. So you are, unfortunately, you're raising a male child by the very falsehood that it is customary, and nobody accepts that. Which is why today you have this phenomenon: when you walk into a bus, when you walk into a public transportation, there are seats reserved for women. They are always occupied by men. Why? Because they think it is okay. She is thriving on the respect and the chivalry that I have to offer, because my
Absolutely.
parents said so. Otherwise, why would the same boy who is respectful to his own sister and mother be disrespectful to a stranger on the roads? Why? Why would he rape and molest somebody else's daughter if he has a sister at home? Why? Because there's a disconnect. We live in the era of passionate parenthood. We fast need to move into professional parenthood. And I always give this example that, we have a custom called, which you are familiar with, Raksha Bandhan. Now Raksha Bandhan is coming.
Yes.
And
Yeah.
now imagine, uh, the tradition of Raksha Bandhan had a very beautiful thought behind it. It was right in the middle during the times of Mahabharata,
Yeah.
when there was an incident concerning Draupadi, and when she was being disrobed, when she was being dishonored, and Krishna, he sort of,
The sari. Yeah. He's fun. Yeah.
he he did that because, once, when Krishna was killing somebody who was doing something dishonorable, his finger was injured. Now Krishna was who? He was a prophet, right? He
Correct.
was traditionally, we think of him as a god, but he was a prophet. And all these guys who ever walked the planet were prophets, were not gods. So his finger was injured, and Draupadi, she tore her sari and she tended the wound. And
Correct.
Krishna said, I am the prophet. I am the son of God. I can do anything. But see, because I've taken birth here, even my finger can get injured. You tended to the finger of a god. You tended to a finger of a god. This is a great debt that I will always carry. If you ever need help, if at all you ever need help, I will be there for you.
I'll be there.
This was a thought, okay, that a woman had helped a god. But today, what is the custom? It is all these, sort of sisters. They have, what do they have? What is the story today? The story today is that you need a
Brother has to
brother to.
take care. Yeah.
So that today it is the story has twisted. So we as a society have taken every opportunity of dishonoring the memory, the credit, the bravery, the valor, the glory of women, and converted them into mere acts of courtesy. That's the problem. So if these things, if we need to change our curriculum, we need to teach that boy that, if you think you're capable, you have a sister who's far more capable. It is just that you don't know. In today, when you do a Google search and you do 10 top scientists, 10 top engineers, 10 top this, you will always find men. But that is not the truth. That is what the Google knows, but that is not the truth. The truth is something which is lying hidden in the unknown. And maybe Project Three Desh, far long when I am gone, maybe somebody else more capable will come and take it forward. I don't know. But my journey has been to at least create that first footstep
The
in time
awareness. Exactly.
for
Exactly.
somebody else to follow.
And from what you are saying, most of the films nowadays that we watch, especially Indian films, uh, the male character is always dominant. The woman is there in a few scenes. She's just shown, maybe as a girlfriend or as the wife who's there just for a few uh, songs or romantic scenes, and that is the only portrayal. When you have films who are women or female dominated, when you see the ratio, first of all, the ratio is hardly compared to a male dominated and a women dominated. And even then, uh, those films are not very successful, maybe because society does not accept that norm and that portrayal. So I think here, even the women today, in terms of filmmakers or in terms of the people who are artists, they should also now come forward and say that it's high time and have that kind of portrayal for such kind of stories being shown, so that they give them equal weightage. I think the example that you gave of the movie Alia Bhatt, uh, maybe as an audience even I enjoyed it, but now this perspective that you shared gives it a totally different light, that yes, somebody who is so independent, shown so strong, and just melts down by looking or just having that one conversation. So I think morally it's the responsibility of that female section of storytelling and the artist to you know take this thing into their own hands and start redefining the stereotypes. And as you correctly said, I think somebody needs to now share these stories to the world, because even I had never heard about all of these wonderful women and all these wonderful stories. I think maybe if we have some filmmakers who would show these depict these characters, the world will have so many different things to know.
Absolutely, and you rightly mentioned, and there is one part of it, the business part of it is unfortunately that is always misrepresented. Yes, traditionally, films with an actor, with a male actor, have done well because those are the stories that have been written like that. So,
Correct.
this narrative, unfortunately, I hold the Hindi film cinema largely responsible for this because they are very poor at the art of storytelling. It is, if you see, even within the Indian subcontinent, if you see, for example, Malayali cinema, if you see Tamil cinema, if you see Telugu cinema, it is far far superior. That is global cinema. Today, the unknown fact is most of the Hindi films which are possibly starred by Salman, Akshay, all these films are actually films that come from south of India.
Yeah.
Those are the original. And Hindi filmmakers, actually, if you see frame by frame, it is just a frame by frame, which is where you see the ascent of directors like Prabhu Deva and all. So it is, they've created this male cartel where they have consciously built a narrative that unless you have a Salman or unless you have a male actor, the films are not going to do well. But there are
Yeah.
enough examples of films that have done exceptionally well, which are female oriented. But today, what is happening is, you see, there is a lot of this is a society, this is an industry which is governed by illiterates. When I say illiterates, it's illiteracy of thought. It's not education per se. They have today phenomenal wealth of to do things that they want to do, but it is the intellectual bankruptcy. You There is a severe need in this context that now today, that women are subjugated to so much of social and overwhelming pressure that they have to brave. So there is a tendency to do films where she will either be a bandit, or she will be a drug lord, or she will be somebody who is abused and out there to take revenge. No, that is where the problem lies. Ultimately, people have rejected those films, but those are
Correct.
poor stories. They are not poor thoughts. Today you had a film like, for example, Bahubali. I mean, if that when that film was made, when that film was translated into Hindi, I mean, the traditional Hindi speakers had never known those characters at all. But they accepted Prabhas, right? They accepted Tamanna Bhatia. They accepted the other female characters. They accepted, the patriarch of the family. I'm forgetting her name.
Mm.
The mother queen. I'm forgetting her name. Ramya, the character that Ramya, such a brilliant actress. They had equal limelight. So today, but those were stories written like that. They don't go out to prove a point. The problem with Hindi cinema per se is that the actresses, even if they start working on this, it is their own personal agenda that is driving the story. They want to come out and present. They're doing those films for themselves, not a good film. They
Correct.
don't set out to make a good film. Now, for example, a film called that we see, this film that was made about Osama, capture of Osama, the English film. I'm forgetting the name of that. Zero Dark 30. Whose film
Okay.
was that? Among all those male characters, there's this female character. This film was her story, and she's not a top Hollywood icon. She's not a top Hollywood icon. That story was written well.
Correct.
That girl did not spend money to make a film to prove herself. She was part of a good story. That is the problem. Indian cinema needs to understand the difference between good story and an actor driven story. These are two different cinemas. Today we are overwhelmingly subscribed, invested in creating stories that suit a certain character. That
Correct.
is the problem. But if you see cinema that was made pre 50s, you see the traces of women as strong characters. Mother India was a fine example.
Absolutely. Lovely
So,
example.
then you had, okay, it had crime, but Khoon Bari Mang Rekha is a brilliant story.
Correct.
There was, a very small little film that I saw on Netflix, Maska. It was a story of this Manisha Koirala, a mother and a child story, the conflict of a traditional Parsi mother trying to, stand by and making her bakery
Correct.
work. Beautiful film. So the problem lies with us. We have identified cinema with masculinity, the male masculinity of it.
Yeah.
And therefore, cinema does not support any film which will have a female character. You will unfortunately have a film like Revolver Rani, where unfortunately our investments are in the wrong side of the storytelling.
And as you correctly said, because the audience also wants to watch, the a male dominated or a Salman Khan or a Shah Rukh Khan movie. So because and there's
No,
business involved.
what I'm saying is, for example, in this context, you also have a Wonder Woman, right? It was a
Correct.
far more successful film than any other film in the whole world, right?
Correct.
You have. A good film will always work. The problem is the producers, the
Yeah,
people who are managing the business of it. They
business.
have become
That's the
subservient to male characters, and they only make films for them. So today the problem is, whereas globally they make a good film, they start to make a good film, that it has to be a good film, and they invest time, effort, and energy. In India, we make films for Holi, Diwali, Eid for a certain star because his dates are available. This is
yeah,
the fundamental difference.
that's
We
true.
don't
And
set
it's
out
a
to make
much awaited movie every year.
we don't make a good film. We make film because the actor, we believe this actor is available to me and I should make a story. So everything in the story is dictated by the presence of the
But
actor.
yes,
That is
that's
all. It is not a
and I
good
think
film.
yes. And audiences today, I think they are also getting mature. So when you show them good stories, I think again the influence as we this is what we are discussing today. When we show such stories to people, it will influence minds and we will see the
Absolutely.
reaction and we will see the difference in society. Today the kind of crimes, the grueling crimes, butchering, I think is something very very normal today. People,
Yeah.
first it was only murder, now there's murder followed by butchering, cutting off parts. So,
There
and
is
this
there
is,
is pleasure in murder today. The
yeah, yeah.
society is enjoying the pleasure in murder, pleasure in crime.
And not only Indian cinema, I mean, a web series like Dexter, where this is something which is shown on a professional basis as to how do you cut parts. So when the youth sees this, of course they feel that all this is normal, and this is something that you can do and get away with it, that it's kind of professional if you can manage it well and you can dispose it well. So Indian cinema to a larger extent, but even globally, I think it's high time that people, the way the world is progressing, I think it's the right time where storytellers, the censor board, the artists have to take that social responsibility to
Absolutely.
make sure that, the wrong message is not conveyed to the society at large.
Yeah, ultimately, and even as people who patronize this content, you know, unfortunately, going back to the same example, I was wondering, most of these parents are going to be the first ones to crib if somebody does this to their own daughters.
Absolutely.
But that time, it doesn't occur their minds. It doesn't. The thought doesn't cross their mind. So it is
Absolutely.
also about us. What we nobody's forcing this down our throat. As I gave you the example of a gas stove in everybody's home, do we allow our child to watch that? That we exercise that responsibility. So just because it is media, just because it is television, just because it is cinema, how can you be so callous about it? It is the most dangerous weapon, which is a ticking live bomb, nuclear bomb in your own home that you so willingly bring home.
Correct. Correct. Uh, I think, Dr. Ashish, the entire conversation that we've had has been so enlightening. I'm truly inspired by the stories that you shared and the kind of research that you have done. It goes a long way of showing that how women have been so, you can say, at the forefront of coming up with such wonderful concepts which are today ruling the entire world. And if I can ever lay hands on this book of yours, I would love to read it. So thank you so much for such an enlightening session. It's been an absolute, uh, most wonderful conversation with you, and something which is the need of the hour.
Thank you so much, Farida. Thank you so much.
So, signing off as we conclude this very important discussion on the impact of cinema in normalizing the crimes against women, it's, as Dr. Ashish said, it's very essential to recognize the responsibility that filmmakers, producers, and even the audience bear in shaping these societal narratives. While cinema has the power to entertain and also to inspire, it also holds the potential to influence perceptions and behaviors as well. So, by promoting more accurate and respectful portrayals of women and challenging the harmful stereotypes, the film industry can at large play a very crucial role in fostering a cultural respect and equality for women and, of course, the male gender as well. So, as viewers, we must remain vigilant and critical, supporting content that elevates women's voices and challenges the outdated norms. Together, we can definitely encourage a meaningful change and use the power of storytelling to build a more just and equitable society. Thank you, everyone, for joining us on today's episode of The Professional's Pulse. Until next time, stay informed and stay engaged. Thank you once again.